Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ, and today I'm going to make the argument that I feel that organized crime, television, and movie tropes are one of the best templates we can use for creating faction and faction play in nearly any tabletop role-playing game. So I'm gonna make this argument, and this comes about because uh, I'm a lover of crime television, whether it's the real life stuff, the 48 hours, the docudramas that are created. I just finished watching the 5th episode of The Penguin, a television show about Gotham City, which is, the crime-ridden city that Batman, exerts his justice on this very corrupt location. And we have many great examples of crime stories involving criminal organized crime families. Now I'm talking about the cinematic version of this, not the real version of organized crime, because I really don't know much about that. But there are many tropes involved in crime families, and if we extrapolate out why it fascinates us, I was like, you know what? There's a lot of these tropes that really fit into why organized crime dramas why we are fans of those. So if you are a fan of those, this may be a reason why. And if you are someone who isn't interested in this, in organized crime, the dramas and movies and television shows and books and things, this may give you an insight as to why people keep going back to it. It's true. If you had The Sopranos, except it's all necromancers and liches and stuff, that would be cool. Don't necessarily have to take it that far, but yeah, but yeah, I definitely agree with that, right? I mean, if we take some of the tropes, and I tried to break it down. It takes me about 5 or 10 minutes, and this is just off the became to crime. Hey, listen, one doesn't necessarily preclude the other. They're true. I'm not saying one can't be true, and I'm saying that you don't necessarily need to be an organized crime family, but I think there's a draw for it. So allow me to convince all of you, not that it needs convincing, whatever, but allow me to convince you guys about why organized crime is such a draw, and why it is that I think we could use it for storytelling and things like that. So, of course, we have to start out as Tim Pool's Culture War. Okay, all right, there's Dead Man. Hey, been a little while. You've probably been either hanging around in the background or maybe just stopped in again. So cool. Here's a link if you guys want to check that out, because I'm going to copy this link anyway. Yeah, I mean, there's so much. We civilians, we normies, are so intrigued by organized crime for many reasons, and I hope I can make this argument for you guys. Yeah, real life organized crime is probably boring as heck. Insurance fraud, insider trading, Congress. Yep, yeah. Hey, listen. Well, I'm not saying organized crime is stereotypically Americanized, third generation Italian. I don't mean that. I'm just talking about the idea of this. So why have a faction in the first place, right? Yeah, you guys, be nice. But I hear you. So why have a faction at all? Like, why belong to a group like that? I know something else I can add into this. No longer an outsider. Oops. So um, there's plenty of reasons why you want to belong to a group, but I feel like it's a tribal community, and what and of course, breaking even that down, we human beings are tribal socially. We love to belong to groups of individuals of like mind, like interest, whether it's culturally or a location that we all come from. That's why those um, there are expats around the world that gather together in groups because they have a similar background or language or appearance or um, just a commonality of many things, experiences and things. Like I said, tribal community, common interests, uh, definitely the common interest. And it could be something as minor as like sports or music or food, um, whatever the case may be. It could even be economic. Individuals that earn the similar amounts of money have had the similar problems with society, maybe being harassed by the law enforcement or unable to acquire land in a place because it's restricted. You know, the dwarves can never buy land in the property owned by, I don't know, the halflings or something like that. There's also secret knowledge that happens within these factions. Maybe someone wants to become uh, a common one here in the States. Not so much, but I remember when I was growing up, it was becoming a Mason. And the secret knowledge the Masons had, and as a guy, it was all men. I forget what the women's section was called, but it was having access to a hidden type of knowledge and learning new things. And sometimes that knowledge is very mundane, right? Like learning how the legal system works or how to navigate real estate or how to break into, I don't know, investment and stock exchange or something. Like is like I want to know that extra knowledge. Individuals go to these Ivy League schools here in the States, and you want to be pulled into the factions of the Greek the Greek letter fraternities and sororities are an example of that. Then there's unionization of influence. So people can get together, and because they are a unified group, they can use their unification of a group to influence the acts of other people. Hey, you strike one of us, you strike all of us, kind of thing. There's stability in chaos, right? Like if the world is crazy or you feel like things are falling apart and you have no control over your life individually, belonging to a faction kind of creates a bit of stability. Many religious organizations make people feel safe. There's a group to go to that is stable even when your life is falling apart, um, and you no longer feel like an outsider. So there's many reasons why people want to belong to factions, and even many times, even if people kind of don't agree with the faction, but there's like safety in numbers as well. People want to belong to those as well. So moving on, as crime families and things like that. Oh, let me see if you guys have more to say. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, fantasy organized has probably got a lot to do with smuggling spice, yeah, or trading in some kind of forbidden magic. Yep. Oh hell yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And listen, the it doesn't even need to be that deep, but as long as like they have access to something that your average person doesn't. And now mind you, it could be very arcane, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, just even having access to traditional like healing in magic, or I mean in common fantasy, or um hey, we know how to train, I don't, giant spiders, right? They're the size of dogs, and we can train giant spiders, and you can have access to one or something, or the what is it? The love potions or something, or I don't know. We found out that wolfsbane holds off those terrible creatures in the woods, and we only let you know that secret if you belong to us. And then you end up finding out about it, and you're like, yeah, that's cool. Have you ever met many Masons in real life? Yes, I actually have. And they're in Philadelphia. You can take a tour of a very famous historical Masons location. They're like, if they have hours or you go in there, they don't really explain much to you on purpose. But yes, and my great grandfather was a very high level Mason. I know they have like circles and degrees or something like that, and he had a lot of photographs of himself, black and white photographs stuff. Yeah, Freemasons had no women's section, at least not traditionally. No, here in the States, I think they were called something star. I can't remember. It was basically like they created their own offshoot because the guys would get together and then the ladies would get together. I might even look that up. It's not necessary, but you get the point. Because yeah, I heard it's a glorified gentleman's drinking club. Yep, where they get tipsy and make up some mystical mumbo jumbo and then just do harmless charity drives. I've heard that too, right? But you don't know, and there's always that little mystery. And sometimes it's just the classic men's club where guys just smoke cigars and have a couple of drinks and whatnot. I think there's a funny version of it in the latest version of Stepford Wives movie. It was more 2000s-ish Stepford Wives movie, and the guys made this big deal about getting together, and all they did was like they had this big room. You thought it was like leather seats and like scantily clad women, and all they did is get together, and like they had like Legos and comic books and like remote control cars. They would drive around in this big room. Plus they had like whiskey and cigars and stuff, but it was funny. It was very cool. Yeah, great grandfather. Turn of the century. Yeah, 1920s, 30s or something, and such. Yeah, I still remember. My grandmother and grandfather were very proud. But anyway, and it was a big deal too because he was African American, and that was uncommon. And he also, because he was a Mason, in faction wise, he and his our family were in construction, and the construction companies would hire he had a greater chance of being hired for these other jobs and things like that. So factions have goals, resources, adversaries, and barriers. And one great thing I think about having factions and designing factions, especially using crime families as an example, is it gives us a very easy template. And I think one of the templates, especially with crime families, is like, what is their goal? Well, usually the goal is to make money, but we understand that when we see these like television and movies and things like that, well, how do they make money? And how many times have we see this all the time. They're running numbers. Somebody steals a truck full of cigarettes. I don't know what it is, the obsession with stealing trucks full of cigarettes, but they're pretty expensive. So yeah, usually it involves making money off of vices. You guys fill in the blank of all the vices that exist. Usually they make money off of that. Gambling, sex, addictions, all that kind of stuff, right? Lizard brain things. So what are their goals? And then some of their resources. Of course, the goals to make money. So many times their resources are cash, but a lot of times the resources are blackmail and intimidation and threats and things like that. Adversaries, of course, very easy to come up with. Rival families. I even put some down below, whether it's like rival families or law enforcement. I'm trying to think of some other adversarial things for crime families. Sometimes the adversary itself may just be culture, and some of the barriers to doing what they do. So adversaries might be the individuals that are actively trying to stop them, or at least curtail them or disrupt what they're doing, but there may be some actual barriers, whether they're physical barriers. The creation of Las Vegas is a good example of that, where Las Vegas, we know here in the States, Las Vegas was settled by the mob. And the barrier is that they've got to go out and buy this land in the middle of nowhere. And then there's, the legal ramifications of like, who's going to find out why we want this land, and will they let us make our own laws over in this land, and what about food and water, and how do we get people to go there, and stuff like that. Just distance can be an issue. Many times we've seen organized crime where they're trying to, say, buy up a lot of land, and they're trying to get the people to move out, and those damn pesky civilians are living in my building, and I want to raise the rent on it. I need to get them the hell out of my building so I can charge more rent or something like that. Then we move on to like faction traditions, secrets, codes, and punishment. This one may be a little bit more detailed, but again, we do have plenty of examples. Faction traditions can be anything from how many times have we seen organized crime families tend to also be very religious in a weird hypocritical sense. Lots of baptisms and coronations and things. Secrets are definitely like, as I was talking before, the secrets to how to make money, secret knowledges. In fantasy, of course, you have secret knowledge of arcane abilities, secret communication with languages, just learning a different language, a normie learning a new language, like some elemental language or infernal or whatever, or hell, just gnomish language or something, dwarven language or whatever might be important. Codes and punishment kind of go hand in hand. We've always heard about here, especially here in the States, about being a made man, and there's also codes of silence, don't snitch, and the kind of punishments. We've seen organized crime. Let's move around the world with organized crime. Of course, we know people have to dig their own graves and they get punished that way and shot in the back of the head. But we've also seen things where people get branded, or they get a pinky finger cut off, or other various types of punishments. Their territory is taken away. They are exiled and whatnot. And they could have relatively unique forms of punishment that let other people know. The teardrop tattoo is another form of like faction alignment. I remember watching a video. It's pretty old video, so I don't know where you'd find it. Dale Kingsmill of Monarch's Factory talked about thieves guilds, and in her example of thieves guilds, they would wear jewelry, costume style jewelry, just simple jewelry, rings and bracelets and earrings and scarves and things on their arms and fingers, and they would denote levels and types of crime and who you can talk to, and it was like a communication. Thieves can't, but it also was levels of who was higher on what level in terms of what was worn around your wrists and things like that. A perfect example of that would be the Bloods and Crips, right? Blue and red. Mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Some sort of trade union stuff, maybe, that helped feed the reputation for shady dealings behind the scenes. I could see that. Sometimes I remember it. I had a difficulty. I had my my home air conditioner wasn't working. This is quite a few years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, and the air conditioner would not kick over, or I could hear it trying to kick over, and it wouldn't. And got online, tried to look it up, how-to videos, and found a video that was like, hey, it's probably one of these 5 things, and if you just look at these 5 things, this is probably your easy way to fix it. And there was a small part that I found was burnt out. So then I looked for the part and I could not find it at all. And I was like, jeez. So when I finally did find it, you could only get it through a local representative. So then I did some even I was frustrated. So I did some even more research, and I found a local place that only dealt with contractors. And I went to the contractor place and was like, the only thing they could tell me is no. And I went in and the guy's like, hey, how you doing? And I said, listen, I'm not a contractor. I don't have a contractor's license. I don't know, but I just need this part for to fix my um, air conditioner. At least that's what I think. And I understand if you can't sell it to me, but at least give me somebody that could actually give me this part. And the guy looked at me and he stopped. He was like, well, you found your way here. I'm not going to hold you. It's like $30. Went, got the piece, replaced it. But there was no way for me to just go walk into a store and get it. I needed to know somebody who was going to come with a contractor that could get the thing. And I mean, and that's elite. That's legal, right? So that's not even organized crime, but it didn't mean that I needed to belong to a group, a unionized group of one sort. Mm-mm-mm. Sandra says, how about the numbers racket? Yep, numbers racket. Yeah, oh, of course, making money off of like all kinds of betting, and I mean, you know, skimming off the top. Hey, I'm a big time union person, and organized crime and unions, actual unions for like factory unions, are a huge thing. Shai says the mystical superstition in The Sopranos is pretty neat. Remember the raven at Christopher's induction where he becomes a made man. Yep, yep. That I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're so right. And capitalism is organized crime in many ways. Absolutely. I mean, it's very pyramidal. Um, like pyramid scheming. Capitalism tends to be that way. Yeah, most of the people at the bottom are the ones that suffer once these various pyramids keep rising and collapsing and rising and collapsing. It's like whack-a-mole. Ever hear the story about how the government confiscated a brothel in Reno and tried to run it to recoup tax revenue and ended up losing money? I never heard about that one. I haven't heard about that one. We do know about here in the States the Contra affair, where um, the United States was engaged in drug trafficking in order to raise money to fund the Contras, the uh, groups against down in Central and South America that we were trying to fund. That's a thing. Air conditioner union sounds like that thing in Brazil with the corrupt heating technicians. It was kind of like that. It was, yeah, yeah, absolutely. But anyway, so wrote some notes down. I put question marks, although you probably don't really need the question marks. But um, uh, I think story wise, why organized crime families are draw us in, and why I think it relates to like fantasy and tabletop gaming, is because these organized crime families incorporate a lot of different things. So we have combinations of like nobility and blood, corporations and merit, social construct, reputation, family dynamics, and ties. And I think it incorporates all of those things. If we start out with the combinations of nobility and blood, I mean, of course, you have the classic, like, my son is going to take over, or the eldest daughter is looked over because they want the next male figure to step up. But we all know that the daughter is like probably the most capable individual or something like that. Uh, very, very modern day. If we look at modern day organized crime, very, very much falls into line with the idea of nobility and what's the term? Oh wow, my brain is not working. Lines of succession. There was a television show called Succession, and dealt with that, where all the kids thought they were next in line to this the next corporate when their dad was going to pass away. Very King Lear like. And we find that organized crime. And then we move on to corporations and merit. And when I say corporations, I don't necessarily mean it's business, but economic, business wise, and merit. And something that disrupts nobility and blood succession is merit. If you are judged on your merits, you rise up. But rising up in crime families means you're making more money, but also there's the jealousy of it. If you are come across as too loyal, too good, you rise the ranks too fast, others become jealous of you and actually may question your merits in terms of like, what is your point, right? If you're too good, there's also an issue with that. But then if you're skimming on the side, there's also issues with that. Then there's the social construct and reputation. Reputation is everything. Are you known to be brutal? Are you known to be reasonable? Are you known to be someone that not to trifle with? Are you, or it could be the opposite. Are you gullible? Does everybody know that you love gambling or the horse races, boxing matches or something? The social construct itself. Do you come across as stereotypically mobster, or do you blend into society? And there can even be family dynamics in that. You don't look and sound like the rest of us. What's wrong with you? Or it could be the opposite, where you fit into us. You really don't belong, and you believe what we're telling you, and part of our factionalized society so much that you don't fit into regular society at all. Whether it's because you have like such a vulgar tone to your voice. You throw around cash and expect people to just jump when regular normies are like, we don't use cash. You can tap your card on the machine if you want to, right? Jumping ahead in line just because you flashed a couple of dollars, and they're like, no, my restaurant, these people were here first. And of course, there's family dynamics and ties, right? Uncles, aunts, cousins, siblings, parents, grandparents, children, all the dynamics in that. And then I wrote down a bunch of plenty of tropes that we see in organized crime. And feudalism is definitely part of it. Who owns what piece of land? The elders being above the children and granting to them certain stations. Even if the regular public doesn't know it, within the faction there is that as well. Yeah, capitalism. Capitalism is just a word Marx made up to demonize the free market. What we have is good old corporate government collusion. Corporate government collusion. Yeah. Good old. I like. It's like, nah, it's just a good old version of it. Yeah, and I don't know how free markets are when people talk about free markets. I think that's an idealized version. It's not very free. It's like a marathon, but some of the people in the marathon have like baseball bats, and they get to swing it in your kneecaps, and everyone's like, well, there's no rules against that. Yeah, Birthright. I never played Birthright, but I know of it. Ever wonder how a line of succession begins? How the first king becomes king? At least in the mob, who started the family, like Don Corleone. He did it the honest way. Honest way? Usually the first king they take it, right? We don't like to think about it that way, but we think there are rules to lines of succession, and that's not really the case. That's what the Game of Thrones is, the idea that everybody believes there's rules to this thing, and there really aren't. And so for the most part, when people take command, it's usually by force, and then they have other institutions legalize the illegality of it, and then they just legalize it, and then it becomes true. Then that thing becomes true, right? So some outsider takes over the land, and then they get the church, the military, I don't know, guilds or whatever, to formally accept that this new person is the king, or nobility, whatever the ranking would be at that time, and then everybody just accepts it. It's just like it's just like the difference between divorce and um, annulment, where the church comes up, well, we're annulling this marriage because it really didn't happen and it wasn't really legal. And then they come up with this thing to make it seem like, well, it really didn't happen. So here we have, I've decided to put down as many tropes as I could. So we usually have an elder or leader that's often like fragile, emeritus, jailed, emeritus meaning like absent, but they still have some power. Maybe they might be jailed. Having that pivotal person at the very top of the family line and family line. Now, sometimes that elder or leader in many of those crime stories tends to be male, but there are ones where um, it's like the queen mother kind of deal as well, and the person at the very top is the one that keeps order, and their fragility reflects through the rest of the that branching out of the organization. So once they show weakness, then everything else starts to fractionalize, and that's super common in these organized crime family dramas, especially if it starts out with the elder like dying off, having a heart attack, being killed, something like that, traveling to the motherland and leaving everybody behind to take care of things. And then of course we have all of our siblings. And yes, there's different levels to this, but I decided to put down some very common ones. So usually the oldest is next in line. Whoever the oldest is next in line, usually male. So let me male, female, right? And oftentimes when we talk about the oldest next in line, stereotypically it's always like the next in line is the male child, but have seen times when the female child is either the oldest or the next in line, and there's always a question, and usually the question is like the stereotype, like, oh, she can't take over, who's third in line, oh, little Jimmy, yeah, Jimmy should take over, and how that works. And uh, um, not jumping away from gender politics, oftentimes there is in organized crime, there tends to be a desire, I would say you have to fit into a certain type of role, and if you don't fit into that role, how do you then fit into the family? So, the guys always hang around the guys, and the guys have to be the guys, and the ladies hang around the ladies, and all the ladies have to be the ladies. And not only that, but you have to act and portray yourself with them, and if you don't fit in, what happens then? Not too often do you get like the effeminate male or the masculine female or the other that happens to have survive the crime family drama. Not too often. A lot of times they want to get the hell up out of there, which brings me to the middle children or middle child. Oftentimes the middle child might be better equipped to do the thing, but they're often overlooked. They have to wait their turn, or maybe they never get their turn, or no one listens to them, or maybe people listen to them, but they know that they shouldn't because the older child or the next in line, the one who has the coronation, is the one. And then of course we have the youngest child, and many times youngest child is like the naive one, the innocent one, or maybe the wild child, and that's just with the family blood dynamics, right? Like sometimes the youngest one, we all roll our eyes, but we're like, they didn't know their family was in the crime, or maybe the family specifically doesn't want them to be in the crime family, and they keep them separated, even though the youngest one wants to be part of it, which is where I bring up the wild child part. Always spending the money, always causing the most trouble. What was it? The first John Wick movie is a perfect example of that. Like I'm sure he was supposed to be next in line, but my point is, he was the wild child. He was the yeah, I love your car. How much? And he's like, yeah, my car is not for sale, buddy. But he just assumed that would be, right? Even though I'm pretty sure I don't even know if he would hand over the money if he did give him a price. Um, is the youngest one an innocent? We don't know. Maybe they're being inducted, and this is their going through their trial to become part of the family. I'm going to go through some of these real quick, and then I'll get back to what you guys have to say. Um, then there's the extended family, other members of the family that aren't necessarily in the grandparent parent child dynamic, uncles, aunts, cousins, nephews, blah blah blah. And we have like the lore keeper. There's always like some lore keeper, someone that knows all the names, all the background. Are they the mentor, the keeper of tradition? Many times they are. And we know storytelling, they tend to be the one to drop. They're they're usually exposition heavy, to talk about, your aunt, your uncle, your grandfather was the one that did this thing. Usually the lore keeper individuals tends to be older, but same thing, right? Then there's like usually a brutalist. They're usually violent, aggressive, maybe honorable. The person who does the dirty work. Maybe they are like the rabid dog on a leash sometimes, or sometimes the brutalist is very methodical. And every crime family has the one, the hitman, the bodyguard, the thug, the kneecapper, that person that's part of the family. Sometimes the brutalist is the main character and wants to get out. Sometimes the brutalist is the one suffering from the PTSD and doesn't want to do it any longer. There's other brutalists that are like that enjoy it, and we kind of they're the antisocial one, the one that we wish we could be but we aren't. John Wick is a perfect example of that, where here's a person who is very good at what they do, and what they do isn't very nice. That's a line from the Wolverine comics, but yeah, something like that. We also have the snake. There's always the snake, right? This is the person that does the long plots, the backstabber, the turncoat. This is the one that's always ends up working against the family. In the television show The Penguin himself is the snake. Sometimes the snake is says and does things to lay down the groundwork for other plots later on. They will make innuendo to throw Littlefinger type, right? They cause chaos. What is it? What's the name of the Public Enemy song? Black Steel, An Hour of Chaos. They're kind of like that person where there's family drama and argument, and they're the person that basically drops the black steel while there's an hour of chaos going on. They're the one that pushes that sneaks up and puts the knife in the hand of someone that they know just needs to be pushed just a little bit to get them to commit a crime. And the snake usually steps back and goes, I didn't have anything to do with that. There's usually a zealot, like there's a faction convert, like they're completely converted over to the faction drama. They are a true believer. They can never be swayed. They're a preacher of faction purity. It doesn't necessarily need to be religious, but they are the person that will never sway. No matter how much things turn against them, they are dedicated to the faction, and they may tell on a character that has questions. Even if that character is just slightly like, I don't know if this is a good idea. The zealot is like, a boss, there's somebody who you might want to look at, right? Especially if it deals with some of the other family, more central family members. Like, you need to watch out for your third son, because I think the cops might be talking to them, blah, blah, blah. Then there's the sloth, the lazy, bored, non-committal character. A lot of times they sit in the background, not doing anything. So people have to kick their chair to literally and figuratively to get them to do something. They're just living off the money and the privilege, and they throw the family name around, the faction name around, things like that. Sorry, trying to get back to the chat. Yeah, Drew says sometimes the brutal guy like Luca Luca Brasi is going to sleep with the fishes. Yeah. Hey, even that, even sleeping with the fishes is a thing. That's a traditional thing, right? Like the the person who has to dig their own grave, the person who has the what is it, the concrete shoes and chained up and dumped in the bottom of the lake. Um, I mean, these are tropes for a reason. And heck, around the world, there's a bunch of like really brutal stuff. Um, one, I don't know how mythological or true this was, but there was one about the back in the 80s, 90s called the Colombian necktie. And supposedly it was, oof, I can describe this very brutal tactic. It was like your throat got cut and then you could reach in and pull your tongue out and it out of your throat, and it was called a Colombian necktie or something. I don't know. It was pretty wild. In the movie Traffic, I think, and in mm, it might have even been in Sicario, um, about like Mexican cartels, and they would um, hang the bodies of the family members in the off of bridges and in the streets and things like that for people to see, to show that if you snitch, they're going to go after you and your family or something. And I mean that really fits. Yeah, everybody thinking there are rules, but there really aren't. Is that the secret behind Game of Thrones? I kind of, and I think George R. R. Martin kind of makes a point about that. That um, everyone thinks everyone else has to follow the rules, but the fact of the matter is there are no rules. Uh, it's well, and mind you, if we think about it, society is like that too. Money doesn't really have a value except what we place on it. So, I mean that fits into that category. Snake Plissken escaped from New York. Because breaking into a prison to rescue the president of the United States is totally organized crime. Those are some fun. I wish they were taken a little bit, would have been taken a little bit more serious, but it is kind of funny to have like this, like we were obsessed with this, with like pseudo biker Mad Maxy kind of stuff back then. But those were kind of fun. You know, New York City is now what was it? Manhattan was a giant prison. They just put up walls around it, and the president crashed um, into this place. And Snake Plissken had to go in and rescue the president from New York because they just basically put a giant wall around it because the crime was so bad. Real life Russian advertisement for a construction company. You've got enemies, we've got cement. Yeah. Could you imagine that? Oh shit. Oh man. So anyway, so we even have some more plenty of NPCs and things like that when it comes to organized crime, like the non-family positions, right? Um, we've got the lawyer, the bodyguard, the driver, the accountant, fixer, uh, territory specific crime leaders, like someone controls the docks, someone controls the nightclub, someone controls the drug traffic in the bottoms and Blackgate and Crown Heights and all the funky names of the different neighborhoods. You have them. Of course, you have to have a bunch of scapegoats. There are the, you know, and I'm calling them non-family positions or roles, meaning like they work for the family or they are related to the family, and they usually know what role they have, right? This isn't like now the scapegoats don't know what role they have, but there might be these hangers on that the family keeps around just in case things go bad and they can blame it on somebody else. But I mean, especially these top ones, lawyer, bodyguard, driver, accountant, fixer, are always present. There's always what's the lawyer name? Consigliere is always the name of this person, the lawyer that's always like putting their fingers in the air, like la la la, I don't want to be here, I don't want to hear this, while the crime family's talking about like murder, killing somebody, or coming up with some kind of plot, or sneaking something into the prison or whatever. There's always a bodyguard hitman style character multiple ones of those, plus filled with a bunch of like stand-ins and stunt people that are like, big and burly, wearing shark skin suits or whatever in the background, or track suits. What is it? The tracksuit mafia or something that was in a Marvel comics. Yeah, there's always the driver. The driver tends to be um, the can sometimes be the student as well. Like the driver drives around one or more of the family members, and they get to hear and be part of many of the goings on. And sometimes the driver is that's it's like being a squire. They are the driver, but they're like, you follow me and just stick in the background. Don't say anything, but listen and learn. And they stand in the background. They're not the bodyguard, but they are like the witness of the thing. Definitely accountants. Accountants tend to be the some of the most valuable, and sometimes also the most expendable people. Well, not the most expendable. I'll say heavily threatened. Sometimes the accountant can get a little bit too above their britches, knowing that a lot of that information is in their head or encrypted or hidden, or they have dual books. They have the real books and the fake books and things like that. And then of course there's the fixer. This person just fixes problems, right? And they often are, the family likes to get the person that fixes the problems, where it's like, don't tell me what you're going to do. The problem just needs to be fixed. And usually the fixer has like some amount of resources, and sometimes the fixer is on a leash, right? Like the fixer just sits back twiddling their thumbs, and once they're called in, they're like, look, I'm a hammer, I'm not a scalpel. So if you call me in, that means there's a huge problem going on. um, and then we have outside the family roles, right? The bribe, the intimidated, the blackmail, the envious targets. um, there's a if we go backwards here, the envious ones are usually the ones that want to be part of the family. They want the money, they want the privilege. They may work in regular society and be envious that the faction gets to do what they do. Um, the publicity, the how many times have we seen these organized crime families host a party or arrive for some coronation in terms of civilian life, and everyone turns and looks at them, and they're envious because they have front row seats. They get to shake hands with all the important people, walking up to them very easily. They are when there's a wedding or a funeral, all the other important people come from distant lands to come in to give thanks or condolences. The classic wedding trope of all of the envelopes stuffed with far too much cash in them, given to the marrying couple and whatnot, is very very fun. Um, then there's the blackmailed, intimidated, and bribed individuals, and those tend to be in equilibrium, not in a very fragile state of equilibrium. It just takes a little bit to push these bribed and intimidated and blackmailed individuals to one side or the other. Sometimes they are like, I don't want to get involved because I don't want to die. Other times they're just pissed off, and they can't take being extorted, and they do something maybe outside their skill purview, but they may want to like maybe the crime family takes advantage of one of their children, and they're like, me intimidating me is fine, but using my children is too much. And they get themselves a small handgun and their sweaty palms, and they want to take out one of the crime family members. But the crime family is like, I know what you're about to do, I know what you have hidden in your jacket, don't even try it. you know those people become contacts and whatnot. And then we even have adversaries, down here, like law enforcement, rival gangs and families, rival families, the media, politicians, local business owners, and oftentimes they become now the crime family may not necessarily believe any like they may feel like they have the law in their pocket, or they may not be scared of certain rival families, or maybe they don't care what the media says about them, investigating them or something like that, or maybe they feel politicians are weak and easily manipulated. or local business owners, they just completely ignore them. But those adversaries can also rise and fall in power that the arrogance of the crime families may not understand and whatnot. He's so funny. Oh man. I would have given the vaguest idea of what Snake Plissken actually did before he went to prison. Because in the movie he was just a generic criminal, right? I can't remember. I think he had some other skills, if I'm not mistaken. But I don't think they went too deep into it. I think he just had a cool look and a leather jacket, and that was it. He initiated the early retirement of one of our best employees. How Tony explained to his shrink that Ralphie killed a stripper. Yeah, yeah. What did he? What is it? What did he call her? A how. I was just like, did he add an extra syllable in there? I was like, this guy is terrible. But I was like, oh my god, like, yeah, pretty brutal, right? Like that whole story, short storyline and whatnot. Joe Pants. I'm gonna go get the papers. Tommy two times. What was there was a comedy routine with Joey Bag of Donuts. Oh man, it was all these funky names with crime family. It was the Joey Bag of Donuts. Always had a bag of donuts. Joe Bags. Drew Big and Burly, back to being gay, yes. Now I want to read a gay mafia romance story. Gay Romeo and Juliet, if you like. Romeo and Jules, I guess it would be. Romeo and Jules, I guess would be. There's no, listen, one doesn't preclude the other there, Drew, at all. To be honest with you, maybe if you wanted to combine, a faction doesn't need to be a crime family. I'm just using this as a template because I feel like, especially if we go back to this part of it, if we go back to, oops, I literally let go of my thing. Especially if we combine like why be part of a faction combined with this part here, the nobility, the blood and nobility, family dynamics, social constructs and reputation and things like that. Like this, it seems to have a real, and I think why writers really love them is because you can use all of the tropes of ancient nobility that fits in with a crime family, and you layer that on today's like political system, and you layer that on top of today's corporate structure, and you lay that on today's law enforcement structure of police and court system and jail and things like that. And then you layer that on top of family drama, and all of that mixes together in these crime families. And you can tell different stories based on each, whether you want to break off into different storylines. You can break off into storylines of, let's go with the Joe Pants thing, where he killed the stripper. It's like, okay, is this business related? Is this does this deal with tradition? Is this a in The Sopranos? It was also, here's a made man, because we could talk about the tradition of being made. Here's a made man that you're not really supposed to question their antics, but at the same time, this individual is a bit wild and out of control. And how do you correct that behavior when this person is a made man? Now, in organized crime, and this is the cinematic version of the thing, right? Where a person that is made essentially is untouchable. If you have a problem with them, you can't just confront them, you can't speak to them any kind of way. It basically means that you have to, they have the right to request nearly anything and without question, which gives them ultimate power. At the same time, if they're smart, the made person also understands that, like nobility that can wave their hand and everyone is supposed to fall into place, they also understand that there's a give and take. that you are supposed to be responsible with this power, and you are not to ask of people too much stuff because you're going to stress out the system. You're not supposed to spend too much money. You're not supposed to draw too much attention to yourself, but you're supposed to have your desires your orders followed without question. And that can be itself is a great storyline, because if players are members of a faction and up to this point they've been like, hey, fist in air, um hand claps, um uh, bro hugs everywhere. This is great. We love it. And then somebody comes along that's part of the 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 social structure of this faction and goes, "Hey guys, listen. I'm gonna need you guys to do this thing. And why are you still standing here looking at me like like I'm crazy? You should be doing what I told you to do." And when that gets thrown in the player characters' faces, they might go, "I'm not following this guy." And everyone's like, "Shh, you're not supposed to say that out loud. Shh, be quiet." Right? Um, there's a lot of that happens in these, where we think there's rules, and then you realize the rules aren't as stable as we like to think they are, right? And um, you know, uh, what's the one of the greatest crime movies ever was uh, put to film was Goodfellas. And the beginning of Goodfellas shows you all the great stuff about this guy that ends up being part of this crime family. And it like similar to Wolf of Wall Street, it's the same way. It's like, hey, this is all good. This is all great. This is where the money's at, the power, the influence, the social dynamic, being able to break the rules of civilian society. Like when uh, our main character in Goodfellas wants to go out with Karen, and come to find out that she was being abused by this other boyfriend, and he just basically takes out his pistol and pistol whips the abuser in the middle of the street, breaks his nose, and points the gun in his face, and he's like, "If I ever see you around here," and she was just like so turned on by that and stuff. And yeah, it's that kind of thing where like you're not supposed to do that in polite society, but he sure did solve the problem. And yes, there were other voices around in that storyline. They were like, "You shouldn't be with him. He's dangerous. He's part of this family." There, and you could not convince her otherwise. It's funny that her name was Karen, but anyway, but you get the point, right? I think using this as a template for factions. It doesn't have to be crime. Let's say it's a guild of some sort. There is this fantasy, and they're stonemasons, and they build castles and secret dungeons and things like that. I mean, do they have secret knowledge about a thing? When someone's like, down in the Underdark there are these monsters, and they go, "Don't worry about it." Well, what are you gonna do? Don't. If we tell you, we'd have to kill you. We'd have to bury you down in it. And they might say that in total seriousness, even though they may be joking about it. But yeah, who's to say that a guild of stonemasons doesn't operate this way? That there's the head of the dwarven stonemasons, even though there's so many other races in fantasy, is like, "No, my kids are going to take over." And the elf that's got the bloody knuckles and stuff has been working there for 175 years is like, "You mean I'll never move up? Like I'll never be? I mean, I just want to be the right hand man, and your kid is lazy." You do realize your kid is a rogue, right? Like, I think he's like a third level rogue. He's not down here. He's up on the surface doing that adventuring stuff. He's not going to be down here building dungeons for monsters. That's what I'm doing, I don't know. That sounds pretty ridiculous, but it is pretty funny, though. Yeah, talk about Goodfellas, where I learned to slice garlic so good. Sicilians wanted me to cook for them. You know what? I heard rumor that the slicing the garlic so thin that it's like thin like paper, they just made that up. I heard rumor that that was actually not a real thing, but it sounded so good. I was like, I bet it became a real thing. El Grasso, hey, what's up? Yeah. Um, well, talking about crime, but we're also talking about how it fits into tabletop role playing games. Like how crime family dramas are some of the best templates to use for making and keeping factions interesting and incorporating them in our tabletop world building and role playing games and things like that. Um, the other part that I think is before we get out of here, that I think is excellent for using this. Let me move down here. Come on, just a little bit more. There we go. Um, Down here are all of the dynamics, the different NPCs, right? Like sometimes when we think of a faction, it can be a little bit monochromatic, where everyone thinks the exact same way. They kind of look and act the same. Um, like, let's go with our classic evil cult, right? But imagine the evil cult with all of these other people in it. You know, the elder that is losing power because they're fragile or they're jailed or something. The siblings that are, you know, the next in line. And does it matter if they're, you know, brother, sister, other, whatever. The middle kid that might be better equipped to take over the evil cult. The youngest member of the cult. Are they a member of the cult? Are they just blood family, but they don't know about the cult, or people are trying to keep them away? Or is this the wild child that's bringing too much attention to the evil cult in the first place, which is why the player characters get involved, even though nobody even knew the cult existed? And then there's like the rest of the cult leaders, right? Is there the lore keeper, the brutalist, the snake, the zealot in that group? I mean, there's a lot of tropes, and mind you, I'm saying this specifically as tropes because we've seen many different crime family dramas that have multiples of these characters or don't have any of these characters in there. And so definitely mixing and matching them. And what's great about using this for factions is you could very easily slip new characters in and take some out, whether it's by player character actions or not, or inaction, right? Maybe the elder of a faction was arrested, and the player characters know who this person is. Maybe they have some important information, but the player characters don't do anything. And then later on, come to find out that that jailed leader of this faction was broken out. They escaped, or they were sick and fragile, and they got sick, and they need one or more of the player characters has the ability to cure them, or they went on an adventure and recovered an ancient artifact that could heal their affliction, but they don't do anything. And maybe the faction now has their eyes set on the player characters. Like, wait a minute, you were supposed, we made you a great offer to buy that item off of you, and you just ignored us. And the player character's like, you offered me like 30 silver pieces. Like, seriously, this, I looked in the book, this is like at least 2,000 gold pieces. Like, I'm not doing that. And then the faction's like, yeah, but you let our elder die or transform or whatever. Like, they got lycanthropy or something, whatever, it doesn't matter. And that I mean, even these other NPCs that you put in down, like the zealot, the snake, the brutalist, the lore keeper that's in this faction, maybe they are related to or know about the player character. Like, can you imagine the lore keeper going to the player character to find out more lore about like arcane abilities or something like that, to then bring it back to this faction? And mind you, all of this doesn't need to be criminalized. This could be like a knight's order or a goodly, lawfully and goodly religious organization in your fantasy realm or something like that, fantasy game. But there could still be nobility and blood and jealousy because someone was raised up to a level that they shouldn't have been. How does the knighthood earn their money? Do they even accept merit in terms of their status, or is it about seniority? You know, and what about the family dynamics? Does that even matter? there could be outside family members that aren't part of the knighthood, and the faction of knights may say, listen, you're going to have to stop ignoring your family. You can't keep going back and forth. Pick one, you know. And then what about the reputation? I ran a game when I was much younger where the holy knights were the they ran a genocidal campaign against the goblinoids, and those goblinoids came into town with a cart filled with their dead women and children, and to beseech the council members to not only recognize their goblinoid land holdings as a real nation, but to say like how brutal these people are. And the knightshood was disbanded, and the knights didn't know what to do, and then they became very ravenous. Those knights were like, you don't know what you're talking about, they're evil, they're trying to, you let them in, you recognize their sovereignty, now they're going to destroy everything, and things like that. And I kind of flipped it on its head. And so I mean, there's so many things you can do with it. And it came, mind you, it came to mind because The Penguin is a crime drama. If you erase the serial numbers of the characters from Gotham City and Batman's Rogues Gallery, it's still a great crime drama, and it just really impressed me. So that's all. So crime families as faction templates, I think it's really cool. Knight's Order plus Goodly King running the racket, just like in real life. Yeah, just like in, yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, not too far away from that, right? Like at least people who think they are goodly and knighted and above reproach, especially if the people think that way. And with a faction, it's very easy for socially for the people to accept them, whereas the player characters may be very well versed with, like, no, they're not as good as you think they are. They really aren't. But anyway, something that just came to mind, I thought I would share it out. I'm sure there are you could poke holes in my dissertation, I guarantee. But yeah, the Goodly King forbids the spice to jack up its price on the black market, so the Holy Knights can make shitloads of money controlling the spice flow and give Goodly King a fat slice of the profit. Did someone just write the plot to? Because I remember there was a plot to Dune like that. Huh? Scratch chin. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, all that stuff is a thing. As a matter of fact, in my Knight's Order campaign that I ran, the Knight's Order, they felt like they lost a purpose if they didn't have an enemy to fight. So they kept spending the entire time trying to provoke the goblinoid sovereign country into doing evil things, so that they could then rationalize, they could authorize a campaign so that they could keep the war going. But yeah, and then come to find out that the knights were working with a faction of the goblinoids. Strangely enough, similar plot to one of the Star Trek movies, where the two enemies were working together so that they could keep remaining enemies, despite the fact that they were working together very stably and very up in the open. Like, okay, guys, we need to figure out how to keep this war going, because both of us are going to lose our positions, and stuff. Yeah, it was a whole thing. And one of the yeah. Sounds like you know a lot about how it works in sunny Serbia. I think these things are universal. I've only been here in the States, and I just listen. These things happen. These are universal truths. Now many of us could turn the dials of how intense they are, but come on, we all know. We know. Here in the States, we're going through a political season, and many of us, actually the vast majority of us, are rolling our eyes at the the edges of extremism of like the people who just believe that their side is right and everybody else's side is wrong, and we're just rolling our eyes like, no, you're either selling fear and anger, or you're pandering, and you're selling complacency, and you're either doing carrots or sticking. You're either using a stick or a carrot. It's either one or the other. Not no nuance at all. It's crazy. So, guys, thank you very much for letting me share this with you guys. Thank you very much for even stopping by. I really appreciate it. Yeah, for Dead Man and everyone else that hasn't been here in a while, I'm still here, still doing my thing. So if you found this channel, please like, share, subscribe, follow. Let others know about it. If you have some ideas about some subject matter you'd like to delve into, I'd be more than happy to do so. I do plan on doing more, spreading the love of other tabletop role-playing games and other things as well. So, yeah. This is your chance to vote for fictitious character, the ghost of Macho Man Randy Savage. So funny. That's a good one to take us out. So, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. Macho Man Randy. I can't do the voice. Whew, I can't do it. It's pretty deep down in there. So, guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. Really appreciate it. I know your time is very valuable. Thank you very much for spending it here. I hope in return I can give you back change for your tabletop and maybe even personal life. So, thank you very much. Have a great one. Peace